community leaders from the business, professional, nonprofit, and political arenas. Our show brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. And I know it's now March, but August isn't that far away, and that's when the 180th Vermont State Fair will be coming up. We have a very special guest today, our new police chief in Rutland, but he's not really a new guy. Most people who've been hanging around the city for the past, 15, 20, 25 years know Matt Prouty, but very recently the Police Commission agreed to name Matt Prouty the new police chief in Rutland effective March 1st. So I thought it would be a great idea to get together and talk with him about some of the challenges and goals that will be coming up. And I think, he can let us know how long a term it is. I think it's 4 years, but I could be off. But first, Matt, welcome. And in case people aren't aware of your experience and background, I thought it'd be great to give you a couple of minutes to tell us, who is Matt Prouty anyway? Where did he come from and all that kind of stuff?
Well, thanks for having me, Brian. And Matt Prouty, where does he come from? Well, I'm a South Street boy, gut boy, here in Rutland. Went to Christ King MSJ, but I graduated from Rutland, which, interestingly enough, everyone I went to school with forgot about that 1 year.
I never knew that about you. So you went to both high schools?
I did. Well, for one, Marshall Prouty, my father, became the foster grandparent at MSJ my senior year, and there was no way that I was going to be in school with my dad there. So I went to Rutland, but I was also a soccer player, and Rutland High at the time had a pretty good team. So I actually got to have a playoff run.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the reason for that, and it saved my folks some cash on the tuition side. So I enlisted in '89. For 1990, after I graduated, I went to join the United States Army active duty. Did 2 enlistments. Spent most of my time in Germany, where I met my wife. We have 4 kids. I have 4 grandchildren now. But I came back to Vermont in late 1995, joined the sheriff's office in 96. The sheriff's actually sent me to the full-time academy. So from 1996 to January of 99, I was with them, but January I started with the PD. So 26 of the last 27 years I've been here with the city.
So, I never knew you were a sheriff first either. Who was the sheriff at the time?
So when I applied, it was Lee Jones, when I started, it was R.J. Ulrich. But the same thing with the PD, so my conditional officer was given to me by Chief Bob Holmes, but by the time I was all settled and sworn in, Tony Boss, he had taken over.
Yeah, interesting. So you've been kind of like, I don't want to say in and out, but you were a member of the Rutland City Police Department for many years and then, in quotes, retired and then came back. And in between, of course, was Project Vision, and you were the main guy on that as far as I've been able to determine.
Well, so Scott Tucker, Captain Tucker, was the first executive director under Chief Baker for that. And then when he retired, I'd kind of been, I was his sergeant for a few years up in Vision before I got promoted to commander. So I left Vision, became the patrol division commander, and that was in 2016. In 2018, when Captain Tucker retired, I had asked Brian Collamore, I'm like, hey, I only have a few years left. Will you let me go back to Vision and just end my time up there?
Okay.
Because the outreach piece was pretty important to me. So I did that, and not knowing that I would be back for round 2.
Yeah. And, of course, recent developments. Brian Collamore will, by the time this show airs, no longer be the police chief. This is set to air on March 1st. So you'll become, actually on that day, the new police chief. And I wanted to give you again a chance, and you and I know each other fairly well. We meet quite often at one of our service clubs. Talk about, and you can do it in whatever order, goals that you have, because I did read the Rutland Herald and Digger with some of that information, but also the challenges that you're going to face. And I'd love if you could talk about community policing. It's a phrase that a lot of people use, but I'm not sure everybody listening might know exactly what that is. So I'll just leave it wide open, and you can go from the goals, the challenges, community policing, whatever you like.
Well, let's start with the goals. I have 3 that I've been pretty open about with the public and internally at the station, and that is, first one is being recruiting. We can't stop. We can't stop recruiting. We need to get our numbers up. I know it is a challenge right now fiscally with the city, but we're going to continue to do our best to try to get numbers hired, and I'll work with the board as best I can. But we need the numbers to do the things that the public wants. There's a capacity issue when you don't have officers to do them. And the second, I think, is probably one of the most important right now, is working on our analytical product. So just driving around blindly saying, hey, what are you going to do today? I'm going to get in a police car and drive around aimlessly and wait for a call to come in is not what we want. So right now, my data analyst has been activated by the Air Force, so he's away, and I am without that product. So I've gone into a contract with Crime Research Group out of Northfield, and they're going to help me with an analytical product. So that's a big priority. So then, the sergeants and stuff, they can look at this data and say, hey, this is how we're going to deploy our resources. This is where we're needed. This is the day of week, time of day in the area. We want to be smart with the amount of resources we have. And then the last, and probably the most important, is there's going to be a renewed focus on our wellness. We have a policy that's I'm looking at right now. The SOP should be in place soon, and that's on our critical response, our debrief, what we do after critical incidents. And also, we're going to have in place a clinically led peer support group within the police department. So what I mean by clinically led, the police department does have a clinical psychiatrist on retainer. They will oversee the program, but internally, people will be trained to provide peer support for the officers and their peers within, after critical incidents. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not going to be good to anybody.
Yeah.
So, and this department's been through a lot, and I can't stress it enough how you have care for the caregiver kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, those are the 3 big priorities right now.
So the second item you mentioned, I just wrote data down. Is that where we get all the so-called RUT stats, where
correct,
if there's a particular location in the city that has asked for multiple responses from the PD, they kind of go on a list, and I think it's kept weekly?
It's biweekly. Yeah.
Okay. And so if a particular location or address is on that list, am I correct in saying that it will probably come under a little bit more scrutiny than it might otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, scrutiny might not be the best word, but at least, there's an awareness of it. And then the question is, so what's the driving factor there? Is it a mental health issue? Is someone there under supervision with the Department of Corrections? Is it something that we don't know? Do we have to do a little bit of digging? It's that type of analysis, and then you can have an appropriate response. And sometimes it's just a matter of putting it on somebody's radar, and then it gets a little extra love from the patrol division, or some directed patrols, what have you. And I'll give you an example. Would have been like the transit center. Mm-hmm. What it really came down to was presence, and so we worked with Marble Valley Regional Transit, and we ended up doing a directed patrol there a couple times a day for X amount of hours, and it completely changed the dynamic. That, in conjunction with a very clear effort to clean the space up, improve the lighting, and sort of that broken windows 2.0 that you hear spoken about often, makes the place welcoming. Good response from folks from the Asa Bloomer building, state workers. I received feedback that folks that hadn't walked to work in a long time are now comfortable doing that again. Because listen, a lot of life was being played out in the transit center. It was very dysfunctional. It was a mess. And broken places that appear to be broken just continue to have dysfunction. So that's really my focus in some of these areas. Keep it clean, keep it nice.
Yeah. We're talking to Rutland City's new police chief, Matt Prouty, who is back on the job effective, today on March 1st. He takes over. And I do know exactly what you mean. I happen to be close to that location a lot, doing some banking, and I can look across and if I see the light bar on a cruiser, the blue light, I know that, I don't know how to put it, mischief probably isn't taking place there because, they've got a law enforcement officer right there, and that was not the case at one point. And I know we talked a lot about, having the actual police office there, and that was, I think, financially not going to work. But it's nice. It's nice to know that every now and then I'll look across and I can see the light bar on, so I know things are good there. You got 3 shifts at the PD or 2?
There's 2.
Okay.
Well, so there's actually 4. There's a line 1 and a line 2, which has a day and a night.
Okay.
So yeah, these guys are on 12-hour shifts.
Wow, I didn't realize that either. That's a long shift. So many people unfairly, I think, don't understand how law enforcement works, and I have great respect for whatever agency is performing that duty. So during the day and then at night, they get a couple hours there, or how does that work?
So it's based off of the data, right? And some of it's feedback, maybe from the bus or what we're seeing.
Okay.
But again, it's looking at when those calls are coming in. So someone's basically crunching the numbers. So like, hey, this is either an area is starting to get hot, meaning whatever is happening there is starting, the calls are starting to pick up. We need to get in there a little bit more, see if we can drive those numbers down. And that's how it's picked. So it's usually going to be during the day, but sometimes it's evenings. I can tell you one of the areas that we're doing that now based off our data is Sheldon Towers. Sheldon Towers has had some issues, so we've been doing a direct patrol there, trying to stabilize that. That's an important asset for us in the city for housing, so we can't have it being the Wild West up there. Yeah,
and I was very surprised to read because, I don't know, I think most city residents never view that as sort of a problem area. It's folks that have been there a long time and just trying to get along. So, yeah. Interesting. Okay, let's move to the challenges if we can a little bit. You've mentioned, if you take a look at goals, the opposite of that becomes challenging. So, recruiting, obviously, that was number 1 on your list. I know, based on city response to the tax rates, which are both municipal and school generated, it's tough to get added positions during times that are economically not doing well for a lot of people. So I assume a lot of that's fiscal, that if you had a blank check and you could just write whatever you wanted on it and bring people in. But how popular is it, I guess I'm also asking, to become a law enforcement officer? You guys and gals have a really tough job.
So it's a national issue. Everybody's fighting over the same talent. And I came back to Vermont in 1994 briefly while I was taking some leave time to apply for a job in Ludlow, of all places.
Huh.
But they had an opening. 450 applicants for one spot.
Wow. That doesn't happen anymore.
No, it's not the same, right? So here we are, all the departments, state, so when people think about, I'm not just competing with other city departments, right, for talent. I'm competing with the state police, Burlington, and agencies out of state, right? And it's hard when, Rutland can't offer the same pay that maybe some other towns do. And not only are we not going to offer the same pay, guess what? You're going to be a lot busier here. So we're trying to sell it on, hey, do you want to do police work or not? Right? But now we're getting into like the nitty gritty of looking at each line item of, what can we live without? There's not a lot you can do with payroll and benefits. Those are sort of set, but those other costs, what are we want the guys to have the best equipment to do the job, but can we make stuff last longer? It's those kind of hard conversations. So, and I'm even courting the idea of, if the opportunity presents itself, can Rutland, the city of Rutland, become a regional dispatch hub where we receive money either from other municipalities to provide a dispatch service. So if that were ever to come to fruition, and it has the ability to be sort of like an enterprising fund, meaning you're not just covering your cost, you're also making a little bit of money because you took on the burden of providing the service. You're going to make some extra money that could go into either equipment replacement or, pay for those staff, something to take that burden off the local taxpayer.
It's interesting you bring that up. I sit on the Government Operations Committee in the Senate, and we have a bill which I think will move out of our committee to the floor at some point in the next week. Maybe by the time you hear this, it will already have moved. It's being dubbed as a pilot for Windham County only in terms of setting up a governance model for just law enforcement, not ambulance or dispatching or fire, but just law enforcement. And it will depend on a county tax, which will be made up the budget by the assistant judges. But the idea is, and Sheriff Mark Anderson, who's sort of driving the bus on this, has done a really good job in terms of reaching out to, they, I believe, have 24, maybe it's 23 different municipalities in Windham County. 4 of them have their own police department. Brattleboro does. I don't know all the others, but 4 of them. And they would not necessarily be involved with this pilot project because they're already working in their own particular areas. So that leaves 19 others. And from what I hear, about 14 or 15 of them have already said, yes, we want to try this. It's got a 5-year plan, and then it goes out of business if it isn't working. And what will happen is everybody down there pays, as we do here, a county tax of some sort. But it would be the ability of the legislative body, so the Board of Aldermen in those towns, to approve, I guess, adding a little bit. Some towns, though, may actually, because they can contract with the sheriff now, they would be actually paying a little bit less, but getting more service. And we don't know all the details. What the bill does is set up a council to make all the final decisions about how this would all work. But they could, Mark was saying, I think, I can't remember the number of law enforcement officers he has now, but he would be able to add about 6 or 7, and if he can find them, and then they would be dispatched to contiguous municipalities, so towns that are near each other. So they've got quite a range, as Rutland does, from Westminster down to Putney. And if you call, you may not see anybody for about an hour right now.
Right, that's right.
It's just that's the way things are. So this would allow them to get up maybe little sub-offices and cars, because the sheriffs have to buy their own, or at least the department does. And I don't know how that's going to work out, but I think I'm fairly confident it'll be on the Senate floor before, and town meeting day the week after is when we call crossover, where the bills that each chamber of the House on one side and the Senate on the other have to finalize a bill, and then it gets sent to the other chamber. So I don't know whether, because you mentioned the dispatching situation here, that's interesting. This would not necessarily be for dispatching; it would just be for the hiring of additional law enforcement people. And I don't know how that strikes you. If it works, we could do the same thing, I guess, in Rutland County. I don't know how it's going to work.
No, I think so he's going to run into the same issue that everybody else is. Well, unless he's using level 2 officers, which the sheriffs do more than anyone else. We don't do that.
Right.
So we only do level 3 full-time certified. You can probably get away with having those bodies, but there's limitations to it. I'm not a fan of using level 2s that way. But I think what we're getting at is, you brought it up very clearly, is how do you fund these things, right? And the last time I was having this conversation, Brian, was actually 2016. I had just taken over as the patrol division commander. So here we are 10 years ago, the same conversation. They were talking about, how do you get some type of equity and service across the state with dispatching? The biggest thing is the funding model. Do you do it because off of grand list and population? If you do it countywide, well, you really can't make that work in Rutland County if Rutland City doesn't have to pay. And why should Rutland City pay if we already have a dispatch?
Right.
It's those types of things. So I think the state eventually will have to come up with a different model, maybe everybody gets $5 to $10 added to their cell phone bill or something like that.
Yeah.
So everyone's paying, not just the property owners.
It is going to be interesting to see how it works out. And there'll be people that are not in favor of it. I understand that. We actually never got into whether they were going to be level 1, 2, or 3. When I talk to Mark the next time, I'll get an answer on that. I thought he was talking about all level 3s. And again, so now you've got to find the people, first of all. Then you've got to come to an economic settlement, here's what you're going to make kind of thing. And the towns could still contract with the sheriff's office down there if this didn't work. And as you mentioned, in Rutland County, there are those that get for nothing and those that pay.
That's right.
In the city, obviously, since there's a professional law enforcement force, people pay. But if you live outside, by default, you get the state police answering calls, and you don't have to pay for it. So the people that don't have to already pay for it will not be jumping up and down with enthusiasm to add something else to their bill. But at the same time, the people that already are paying extra won't want to foot even an extra amount of money. So it does, it's funny you mentioned that too. And we're talking to Matt Prouty, by the way, the new police chief in Rutland. The only thing I think that's had more studies than the dispatching and that whole thing is the education. We have about 28 different studies that we've done over the years, and we've never acted on any of them. And, it's still, if you sat down and tried to design a more complicated, confusing way to do business, you'd be hard-pressed to come up with anything worse than what we have.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Kind of strange, but we'll see how that goes. But I did want to mention that pilot because I think if we get it done on our side, whether the House approves it and it becomes law or not, I don't know. But we've worked hard on that bill in the Government Operations Committee, and there's still some questions that have yet to be answered. So we'll see how that goes. So I think we'll take our first break here on Catamount Community Connection. And again, we're speaking today with the new Rutland City Police Chief, Matt Prouty, and we'll be back with Matt in just a minute. We're back on Catamount Community Connection, and this week we're talking with Rutland City Police Chief Matt Prouty, who assumes office actually today on March 1st, if the scheduling of the program works out the way it should. And we've talked a lot about some challenges that the new chief will face, some goals that he has, recruiting, data, and wellness. We haven't talked about the wellness part. I still want to open up a little bit of discussion on that. But I also asked earlier, and by the way, our show is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. Thank you to the Agricultural Society for their continued sponsorship of the program. The 180th Vermont State Fair is not that far away. Earlier, I mentioned community policing, and I want to give Matt an opportunity to explain exactly what that is for people that may not have even heard that phrase before or heard it and kind of wondered, what does that mean? So what's community policing?
Well, it means a couple of different things. Let's go back to the 90s. So everybody was getting grant money to have either a community policing officer, or everyone was saying, hey, we do community policing. What's that mean? And it meant different things to different people, but I think you have to look at it back then from the focus of the police departments were probably traditional law enforcement entities, meaning we're going to respond to calls, we write traffic tickets, we make arrests. And fast forward to today, the world is far more complicated. Issues that are public health related are also public safety related. The whole term of stay in your own lane doesn't make sense anymore, where you have so many intersections between public health, public safety, things like that. So for us, when we talk about community policing now, it's the building of relationships with other disciplines to affect something positive in community. It's also giving the public access to us, right, to have voice. Mm-hmm. I think that's important. So, Brian Collamore had started the sector meetings, which I think were very important. We're going to continue to do those, where people have access to your police department to give your concerns, to have some ownership for sectors from a sergeant, but you can get to know who that sergeant is if you live in a particular neighborhood. It's relationships with Dick Corcell's team at Rutland Mental Health, because, listen, we're dealing with the same clients. It's using data in neighborhoods to finding out what root causes are that are driving issues. That's what I mean by community policing, because using the wrong tool at the wrong time can do a lot of damage. I'll give you an example. It's the early 2000s. We're in the lower northwest neighborhood, and the mission from the department is, hey, we're doing a no tolerance patrol in the northwest. We're going to drive down crime or whatever. So we go down there, we stop everything, we write everybody, anything that we can arrest, we arrest, and we absolutely changed nothing. But we went back, high-fived each other, great job for doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
So it's it's having a little bit more of a surgical approach. I remember one time having a conversation with one of my sergeants, and we were down on Baxter Street, and it's like, man, this area, it's awful. And I'm like, okay, what about that house? Well, no, I've actually never been to that house. Oh, really? I said, well, what about that one? Yeah, I've never been there. And I did it 2 more times. And he goes, I think I get your point. And I'm like, the reality was we have one apartment in one building. It's not even that apartment. It's a guy that's in the back room in that apartment who's probably on furlough that's doing driving 80% of the issues. So it's that type of thing that we're talking about. It's being available and sort of doing life with your homies. So I want to support our service providers when they're doing initiatives. So coming up in April, we're going to be helping out with the Rutland County Parent Child Center in a 5K, right? It's things like that. Yep. At community events, you're going to see us. We'll probably be on our bicycles. We're like a bunch of kids. We got our new bikes, and we're, hey, Mom, watch! I can do a wheelie. So again, access to us, being smart with information, partnering with organizations, get to know your neighbor type thing. Park walk and talks. These things are so powerful. And what that means is the biggest hindrance to community policing, by the way, is the police car. The police car, just the way cars are designed, they're hard to see out of. We have all kinds of equipment in there, very distracting. If you're not rolling with the windows down, you can't really hear. The way the tint is in the windows to keep out UV light, it's hard to even see, even without tint, inside a car of what officer is that. So we're going to want officers strategically parking the car, get out of the car, and you're going to walk in these neighborhoods. And if you don't want to talk to the police, you don't. But if you want to, you can engage with them. Nobody is at a point of advantage or disadvantage. You can choose to talk to my officers or not. And for the officers that don't have the gift of gab, I'm going to give you a handout. Here, hand this to someone. Here's some talking points. But again, it's that there's a feeling of community when you can see your officers in your neighborhood. You have access to them. That's a priority for me on the community policing front.
It sounds a lot like what we used to call beat cops,
yes,
which is only, for the city, the actual inner
Downtown,
city.
yeah.
It's hard to imagine that you could do that in every community, but I love the idea of getting out of the cruiser and at least making yourself available if someone has a question, a concern, maybe a compliment. It goes a long way. And since you are a native of Rutland, I think you get an added perspective because of that and are able to you really do a good job. I mean, I can remember when being downtown, you'd see the police officer walking around and he'd be talking to people and shaking hands and whatnot. I can remember, as you probably do, when I first came to town, folks like Emmett Fleming and Gene Rusille and all those great guys. George Packard at one time was here for a while, and I can. And those are the kind of guys that I would always be able to go up to and engage without having any fear of any sort of bad consequences. So I want to talk a little bit about the composition of the current. I think there's 34 sworn officers in the city now. They're young, some of them, some are not, but they seem to have a real desire to serve, and I'm not sure that's always been true. as you correctly point out, at some point we sort of had, I don't know, to use a Wyatt Earp sort of attitude, I think, where they walk around and they're just looking to sort of do something. I don't get that same feeling now. We've got some really talented communication-based officers, I think, now. So let's talk a little bit about that. How did we find them? Were we just lucky, or?
In one particular case, we were. We ended up with 3 fantastic officers from another community that have become a very good fit for us, and that were already full-time certified, and they could hit the ground running. So don't mistake these guys. They're going to look for criminal activity. They're aggressive in that regard, and I want that.
Mm-hmm.
Community policing is not light on crime. I want accountability, but I also want the people that aren't in the criminal world to have access to us, and so it's not like, hey, we're going to go out there and crack heads and all that stuff. It's just that's not what we're about. But I can tell you that without any prompting, I have a day shift that took on, the plaza was sort of getting out of control. And those guys on their own, I was doing my thing in vision, but I'm watching them. And they started doing their own directed patrols in the plaza. And they almost took offense to the amount of crime that was happening down there. And I like that. That's taking ownership of, hey, this is a problem. We're going to solve it. And they drove down the numbers on their own. In the plaza. Then we sort of did a control, like, hey, let's back off for a couple weeks, and boom, numbers go back up. And like, okay, this is real. Let's stick with these plans. And it's fantastic to have that caliber of person here. And even if someone were to be hired, and maybe they don't have that type of scope, being around officers like that, that are really effective, it's contagious.
Yep.
Right. And that's what we're getting right now. We're very blessed to have some of the staff that we do.
So I came to Rutland in 1972, and the other thing that's different, at least from my perspective, with the force now, there weren't as many females at one point. It was pretty much a male-dominated profession, but I'm happy to see that that's changed as well. You got a lot of females on the force.
Yeah, so look, we're equal opportunity employer. We're looking for talent. We're probably one of the more diverse agencies in the state, especially for our population. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that if you go back to probably maybe into the 80s, that's when you started to see the shift, more women coming into law enforcement. When I started here, again, there were at least 2 in BCI, 1 sergeant. So I worked for Linda Elric. She was my first sergeant for probably a decade. Scared the hell out of all of us, right? If you got called into the office. But yeah, so pretty consistent since then.
So if someone's listening, Matt, and we're talking to Matt Prouty, our new police chief in the city, and they're interested, do they have to be a certain age, or do they have to, physically, obviously, you got to be in shape. I don't know how else to say it. I'm sure there are physical requirements, but what about age, and how would they get a hold of you or whoever in terms of saying, hey, you know what, I listened to you on the radio, I'm such and such, I'm this old, how do I get into law enforcement, and how do I become a law officer in Rutland City?
So they can call the station and ask to be connected through someone from our recruiting section. So I have several people that are part of that recruiting team. They can go to the city's website, and they can even message us on our Facebook, and someone will get back to them. So you have to be at least 18 years of age, right? High school diploma. I prefer a little bit of life experience. We have hired people that are young, but that's usually an exception rather than the rule. But the process would be from there. You do have to go to the academy. You have to take an entrance exam. There's a polygraph. It's called an MMPI, psychological type test. And there's a PT test entrance exam so that they know you can get into the academy, right? So you're going to want to know those standards. You're going to be make sure you're prepared. The last thing you want to do is like fail a run or something like that. And then you have to wait, do it again.
Many of us that drive Route 7 occasionally or a lot, and again, in weather that's much nicer than it's been this winter, we'll see the recruits running.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the requirement is, how many miles or anything, but I'm sure they're timed. And I always felt like, boy, I don't know if I could do that kind of thing. You know, you got to really want to do this.
You do. And look, quite frankly, a culture that I want at the police department that we're going to build over time is a culture of fitness. When we talk about, it goes back to the wellness piece. For one, there's two reasons. One is when you're working on your fitness, it's much better on the stress side. You're able to deal with stress. Your aerobic health affects a lot of other things, plus the strength training. And it takes a level of discipline to maintain a fitness regimen, right? So what I've seen, you've surveyed the police department, those officers that are maintaining their fitness regimen and are staying in shape usually are less apt to be behind on their cases, manage their time better, healthier overall, you look better in uniform, all those things, right? And so I want to do that from a positive angle. I don't want to come in drill sergeant wise or anything like that, but we really build that culture where we're supporting one another. One of the things I'm hoping to do this spring for my staff is if you want to run with me and you're not on shift, you meet me at the station at 5 or whatever, and we're going to do our minimum of 2, upwards of to 4 miles. That's what we're going to do, and we'll do it together, right? Who knows? Maybe we'll even open that up to some of the public, but
that would be interesting,
to
see a whole group running. Yeah. Does it reach a point age-wise where, we keep talking about 60's the new 40, and I'm in my 70s, so maybe I'm in my 50s. In my mind, I still am. I know that. But where it just becomes sort of you're not matched up very well with the job because you're too old, kind of thing.
I don't know that I would say that out loud.
Yeah, I know. That was a bad question for me to ask you, but I could just speak from my experience. At the moment, I would totally understand that I probably would not want to go into this profession right now.
Right. So our guys they have to go at 60.
Okay.
I think the state
police is 57.
It was 55.
Yeah.
They've moved that up a little bit. But again, this is a demanding job, and for those that are more seasoned that want to apply, look, we have a guy right now that's 54 or 5 that we've hired in fantastic shape. We'll be able to get the 5-year vested into the Beamers plan so they can get a retirement. That'll work for a lot of people. But again, it's starting at 0 with no experience coming in. It could be very difficult for
someone that's a little more seasoned.
Right.
Well put. Let's talk about the wellness part, and then we'll take our second break. Obviously, we've had some serious events over the last few years here in the city involving, responses from the police department, and I can only imagine what it must feel like if you're not able to talk to somebody. You mentioned psychiatrist, psychologist that can sort of help you. We've done a couple other shows where I freely admitted I don't know that I could help anybody. I wouldn't know what to say to try to make them feel better. And I might say the wrong thing and make it worse. So that's not good either. But stress is a big part of this job too.
Well, I think the important thing to take away what you just said is not saying anything.
Okay.
But what we're talking about with peer support is just supporting someone. Maybe you're just listening. Maybe you're just spending time with someone. We're providing a safe place where we can debrief and we can talk about what we're feeling at the time with the right people in the room. That's what we're talking about. What you don't want are staff that have been exposed to a lot of traumatic events, dealing with them by themselves, drinking, medicating, whatever, none of that helps, right? So how do we build this culture and system within the police department? And listen, it's tough, not for law enforcement, military. I'm acutely familiar with both worlds. Historically, we have not done a great job. We put a lot of emphasis on it, but it doesn't mean that we've had the outcomes that we want. I want to, again, really, really focus on building those systems and protocols in place that after every major incident or after search warrants, things like that, that we have a debriefing process. Now, we've debriefed in the past. It's not new to us, but it wasn't a standard operating procedure for it. Really well-trained peer support folks where, again, we're not inadvertently causing harm. So there's training involved, and that's why I want it to be overseen by a clinically led as compared to we're just doing it on our own internally. Because you're right. Look, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I don't have all the answers. There may be something going on that I'm not aware of, but at least with the experts in the room and a best practice model in place, maybe we can keep our staff healthier, not have someone's career end early because of not dealing with the things that these guys are seeing day in and day out. And Brian, I got to tell you, most people have no idea the things that these officers are seeing, the amount of bodies that we are dealing with on a regular basis, just the situations in homes that we are called into that are just so broken and traumatic and heartbreaking. These things add up. This work's heavy. It really is. And if you don't have supports at home, like I'm very fortunate. I have the family that I do. And the experience that I've had. I'm a person of faith. I know when I can tell when my body, when things are getting heavy, and look, I gotta do the run. I gotta, or in the summer I ride my motorcycle, whatever. But not everybody has those skills. So we got to give our people a place, a safe place, and the skills and the oversight to really deal with trauma. It's a silent killer. It can end careers. And if we really care about our people, it's got to be a priority.
We're talking with the brand new Rutland City Police Chief Matt Prouty, who is not new to the area. He's a Rutland native. And we will be back with our final, 8 or 9 minutes in just a minute here on Catamount Community Connection. We're back on Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore, your weekly host of the program. And each week we talk with a different person from our community. Brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society. Don't forget the 180th Vermont State Fair is coming up in August this year. And we will be celebrating both the 250th anniversary of the United States of America and the 180th Vermont State Fair before you know it. Our guest today is Matt Prouty, who is the new Rutland City Police Chief, even though Matt's been around forever. And we've talked about a lot of different things, some goals that he has, some data, which is a very helpful tool for law enforcement to know where they should be in terms of a presence. And rather than just, as Matt said earlier, kind of aimlessly driving the cruiser around without any particular place to go, that's a very important thing, especially when, if we had 100 officers, maybe it's not that critical, but when we have 34 and you only have so many on each shift, it becomes really important to know where you need to be at the time you need to be there. And then we talked a little bit about the wellness piece, which is, again, probably more important than anything else, I think. If you don't have healthy law enforcement officers, you run the risk of some dire consequences, I think. So I don't know if we have about 8 minutes left, Matt. If you have anything else we didn't talk about that you want to bring up, any sort of closing remarks, the floor is yours.
So the last thing that's really been on my mind leading up to March 1st is that the police department needs to be a really good partner with City Hall when it comes to economic development. So as public safety goes, so goes the city. So with the investments that are happening, hotel, things like that in the downtown. All of this space that we're working on needs to be well thought out. We want police presence. We don't want the chaos of bad public policy. No disrespect, Senator, coming from Montpelier.
None taken.
That has affected us to really hurt those efforts. You know, we want people to feel very comfortable in our plaza. I want people heading down to the Paramount with all the renovations and with the hotel. There is a very clear economic path forward for the downtown, and we want to be a part of that to make sure that's successful. So really looking at, you know, space and what it looks like. Does it look broken? Is it clean? Do people feel safe walking there? All those things. I would love for us to have not just a law enforcement officer, but a team of, whether it be a city engineer, maybe someone else just from the streets division, fire safety, whatever, where we host a course on crime prevention through environmental design. You know, how do things look? How are they situated? You know, there's a lot of science behind all that stuff, Brian. I mean, there's a reason why you go into certain like commercial buildings and there's a certain kind of tile on the floor or whatever. It makes people talk softer. There's all of these things. We talk about like the bump outs for the pedestrian crosswalks. Well, what it does, it decreases the amount of time you're actually in a travel lane where you can be hit by a car. Things like that. I think this is the time, while these projects are going on, for us to be hyper focused on space. We're not just going to leave, or I hope we're not going to, and I'm going to be an advocate that we don't. Areas that appear to be broken breed dysfunction. Identify those things. What can we do as a city, not just the police department, but a combined department effort, using DPW, leveraging the fire department, whatever, to make those areas more appealing, keep them that way, and don't invite the dysfunction to grow and breed there.
And we will, regardless of, well, it won't happen by the time this show is on because town meeting won't have occurred yet. Again, we're recording this show on the 16th of February, but it's going to air on March 1st. So we will, I think 4 days after that, I'm not sure what town meeting it is. It's either the 3rd or 4th. I can look it up here quickly. We will have a new mayor, one way or another. There won't be any doubt about that. It is March 3rd, which is, so 2 days from now, assuming this is airing on March 1st, Mike Dunchus will not be, well, actually.
I think he's done the 27th, right?
Exactly. So he's already not the mayor. And then Dave Allaire, in that interim, I think it's a 4-day period, assumed the position. And as we record this, he has not indicated that he wants to run as a write-in candidate, although I think it's fair to say if people did want him to do that, they could still write his name in. He's just not actively campaigning. So we will have a new mayor, one way or another, by the time this week coming is over. Not asking you to endorse anybody, Matt, at all.
No, and don't write my name down. I have enough problems.
Yeah, just let us keep our police chief for a little bit. Don't put him in as mayor as well, because that would be pretty interesting. I guess you'd have to pick one way or the other to go. But we will have a new administration coming into City Hall, and I think you're right. Based on the improvements at the Paramount Theater, which are amazing if people haven't been in there yet, and also the new hotel, which is going up across the street, and all that new infrastructure on Center Street in between on Strongs Avenue, it's going to be a brand new downtown in many, many ways. And I think it is important to align City Hall with our local law enforcement to make sure that we keep it a really nice place to be. Not sure yet what's going to go across the street on the other way when the Super Walmart gets built in Rutland Town. That has yet to be determined. I know there's people talking about different things that could happen there. We were talking at one point about the library moving over. I don't think that's still on the table. But anyway, I think it is important that with the new administration, and I think regardless of who it is, you're going to know who that person is anyway. And so the police chief and the mayor can work pretty well together. Yeah,
I don't foresee an issue. I don't think there's any candidates that are coming forward that don't want the best for downtown.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
we should be good.
Okay, we still have a couple more minutes. Anything else that you want to bring up? I didn't offer my congratulations. I wasn't sure that that was appropriate, since at one point I don't know whether you really wanted to be the police chief or not. But
well, again, it was not something that I was considering at all.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, I was in Pennsylvania when I got a phone call from the police commission, and I ended up missing a dinner with my wife's family that I think she's still a little sore about.
Yeah.
Because of all of this, but yeah, going from having no thoughts of ever doing this to being in the seat, it's a little bit of a whirlwind. Look, I have to, and again, now I got to start making decisions about, how are we going to move forward in the police department. So I now have a vacancy at a command level for vision. How are we going to deal with that? The two people that I had planned on going to the academy didn't make it, so renewed focus on the recruiting and getting folks in. It's a lot right now. So yeah, 2 months ago or 3 months ago, this wasn't a conversation or around the dinner table at all.
Did you ever, like when you were 18 or 19, think about doing this as a police chief, or
no? Oh my God! When I was 18, I was a young soldier. I was just happy to be doing cool guy stuff.
Yeah.
Then after fast forward, I'm at the PD. I was a canine handler for 13 years. I was hoping to be a dog handler for the rest of my life.
Okay.
So I've always kind of, whatever I was in, that's where I wanted to stay. I wasn't thinking about ever being a police chief.
Who was the chief when you first came in?
So Bob Holmes gave me the conditional offer, but then Tony Bossi took over.
Okay. Yeah, I think you did mention that.
Yeah, so did 10 years with Tony and another 10 with Kilcullen.
Yeah.
Baker for a few in there.
And you enjoy the vision work too, don't you?
I do, because it's actually served me pretty well, because you get to know a lot of people in a lot of different disciplines. It's also important that other disciplines get to know us in law enforcement. And if you're not spending time with people and talking about what's important to you and what your goals are and things like that, they're going to assume what's important to you. And that's really changed a lot of folks' outlook on their local police department. Maybe they're watching national news or whatever, and their worldview is, well, the police don't care about my clients. And, well, that's just not the case, right? We want people to be successful. We want people to be healthy. No, we're not going to tolerate criminal behavior, but that doesn't mean that's the person, right? We care about people. And I need all of these organizations to be operating at 100%.
You're 53, I think?
Yes, I'll be 54 in May.
Okay. So this could be a long time for you in that office. And I guess, are you there until they decide, the police commission decides you're not? How does that work? Do you have terms like we do?
Yeah, so we have the police chief has a contract.
Okay.
Which I'm still writing.
Oh, okay.
Still drafting. But it'll be drafted by the time this airs.
Okay. Is there a normal time where you have to go back and sign a new contract?
So it depends on what the agreement is. I've only looked at one from the past, so okay. I don't know. I would like to do a 5-year just for some stability at the PD, and that gives me time if I decide that I'm a one and done, then we can start doing succession planning.
And I think that was one of the things I referenced the Rutland Herald article earlier, that members of the police commission use that word stability as a very important and positive skill that you have. Well, I don't know about skill. It's part of your personality that you bring stability to this job, because and again, I don't take a position one way or another on whether it's better to have somebody from out of the area come in as a new chief without any sort of past baggage, for lack of a better word, or whether it's better to have somebody that's already here. But I think in your case, that word stability was very important to members of the police commission. And I think they're right. I mean, I think it's sort of like sliding into a pair of slippers that you've worn before. I think you feel good to all the people involved. I really do.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. The nice thing is I have established relationships, right? I don't feel like I'm, coming into this job, where I can't phone a friend.
Yep.
And that's important. So a new chief would have to establish all those things, right? And that's time and money and yeah. So.
Well, let me add my congratulations to you, Matt Prouty, our new police chief, and we will hopefully have you back on. I don't know. I tried to get Police Chief Kilcullen on every 5 or 6 weeks. I try to get the mayor on every month or so, and again, depending on how things go on town meeting day, we'll have a new mayor one way or another. I don't know who it's going to be, but I would urge people, by the way, to vote. If 30 or 40% of the people decide for the rest of the folks who it's going to be and all those kind of issues, that's not very healthy. That's not what we want to do. So get out and vote on town meeting day, and then we'll see how things go from there. And it's been a pleasure having you on today, Matt. And
thank you, Brian.
Good luck. Good luck.
I appreciate it.
We'll see all of you next week here on Catamount Community Connection.